I was the perfect student for 17 years, and now I'm feeling completely lost. And let me tell you about why that is. So I think we can start with fourth grade, because back in fourth grade was when we first started having these knockout style multiplication tournaments where you'd 1v1 your classmates and the teacher would basically ask, hey, what's 8 times 7? Whoever answered first got to move on to the next round while the other person was eliminated. But looking back, these tournaments were pretty fucked up because they basically publicly exposed exactly how you ranked against everyone else. And they taught us at a really early age to compare ourselves to one another. It was basically a social ranking and public humiliation ritual disguised as education. Luckily for me, or honestly probably unluckily for me, I would dominate these tournaments. I'd win almost every single one, and when I didn't win, I'd be in the top 3 at least. And this success, it sort of gave my 9-year-old brain way too much confidence. It made me feel really important. I was sort of convinced that I was this prodigy. I was better than all my classmates. I probably thought I was like the smartest 9-year-old on the planet at that point. I was kind of a prick. But yeah, I think that those moments of triumph were when I really started tying my school performance to my self-worth. Whenever I won the tournament, I'd feel really special. And I get the same feeling from other things too, the shiny stars, the A's, the smiley face stickers on your exams. I don't know if you guys remember that from elementary school, but it wasn't just the tournaments. It was these things too that sort of gave me a rush of feeling like I was special and important. And this was kind of like a drug. I mean, not even kind of like a drug. It was a drug. It was addicting. It was sort of all consuming. And the ironic part is my parents, they never really asked to see my grades. I could have been failing every class and they probably wouldn't have known until it was already too late and had to repeat the year. I wasn't really pressured to study hard or anything by my family. I was sort of purely driven by my addiction to academic achievement. And then whenever I get a bad grade, it was brutal. Like I was not good with dealing with bad grades. A bad grade, it didn't just disappoint me. It made me feel like this worthless idiot. I was miserable. I couldn't even stand doing average on an exam because there'd still be so much shame. And the shame felt really intense. And I would pretty much do anything in my power to avoid feeling the shame again. So on one side, I wanted to avoid the shame. And on the other side, I was really addicted to the importance that I felt from doing well academically. Yeah, so I was foolish. I basically allowed myself to get brainwashed into tying my self-worth to my GPA. And what started as this fourth grade multiplication tournament, it turned into an addiction that kind of followed me all the way throughout college. And this addiction, it really started taking its toll on me in high school. After middle school, my family ended up moving to a much more competitive school district. And the students in this new school district were extremely, extremely hardworking. These were going to be future Ivy League students. And, they cared about their grades, honestly, way more than I did, because to them, it was kind of existential. I mean, to them, it sort of felt like their lives were on the line because, I don't know, I've just heard so many horror stories where these kids would get badly beaten by belt buckles or shoes or pots and pans. They'd get things thrown at them. If they didn't perform well in school, I mean, they would get hurt emotionally and physically. It was crazy. And so my arrogant self decided to take all of the hardest classes alongside these students because I thought, hey, the harder the class I take, the more important I am, right? And so now in high school, I was in this ultra competitive, toxic environment where everyone's self-worth revolved around academic achievement. And that mindset pretty much only reinforced my own. And now the shame of getting a bad grade, it was 10 times worse. Now it felt like everyone sort of looked down on you if you didn't perform well. And yeah, high school became incredibly stressful. In order to keep up with these like extremely hardworking students, I had to dedicate all of my time and energy to getting good grades. But I ended up neglecting pretty much every other aspect of my life. I really wasn't taking care of myself. I coped with stress by binge eating. I gained a lot of weight. I felt really depressed. I wasn't confident in myself. I also barely got any sleep. I think I probably averaged like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night throughout all of high school. I remember there being one week where I managed to get a full 8 hours every single night. And honestly, it was a revolutionary week because I never felt so energized and so focused, and my mood was so much more positive. I mean, getting good sleep is revolutionary, but it's extremely undervalued in society. I feel like, especially in high school, you're forced to get up really, really early. And, teenagers don't want to go to bed before 10 p.m., especially nowadays with our phones and our social media. It's a mess. But I digress. I do think that I really didn't make the most out of my high school years. I feel like I really wasted them because, in retrospect, high school should be the time where you're sort of starting to figure out who you are. And instead of exploring my interests, instead of making new friends, meeting new people, going on dates, just generally being open to trying new things, I pretty much spent all of my time at home studying. And I became an antisocial hermit. I barely hung out with my friends, and whatever free time I did have, I pretty much spent it all playing video games. Instead of learning who I was, I learned how to suppress pain and suffering in exchange for the status and prestige of being a straight A student. And the worst part is that I wasn't even interested in what I was studying 90% of the time. Like, studying was so tedious. It was horrendously boring. It was a total uphill battle that I just had to force myself to endure. I really didn't care about what I was learning. Like, I really didn't find it interesting most of the time. I really only cared about getting an A. And if there was a way to cheat, I would cheat. If there was a shortcut I would take, I would take it. Like, the A was my top priority. It didn't really matter how I got there. And so that's sort of how my high school years came and went. By the time I reached my senior year, I thought I had it all. I took the hardest classes. I had a 4.0 GPA. I was friends with the smartest students. And now it was time for college. Now it was time to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life at the ripe old age of 17. But, the small problem was that I had absolutely zero idea what I wanted to do. I had no clue what to pick. And so I did what a lot of people probably do, and I kind of let my family decide for me. I ended up studying computer science because I didn't know what else to do. Not because I wanted to, not because I care particularly about computer science or because it's something that I want to learn about or I want to make contributions to the field of computer science. Hell no, man. I only did this for the money. And yeah, I enrolled in a computer science program at university. I got my bachelor's degree. College was pretty much the same story as high school. All I really cared about was getting an A. I didn't have any passion about what I was learning. I didn't really care to ask questions or pick my professor's brains. I didn't really take any electives or anything. I sort of did the bare minimum to get my degree and get out of there. That was my mantra, I did care about my GPA because I was still addicted to the academic achievement and the sort of importance and social status that came with that. But yeah, that was also sort of a waste of time because I feel like I didn't really learn much. I just got my degree. I graduated. I managed to find a job. And now I'm working that job. I'm working as a software engineer. And, on paper, my life is pretty great. I make a lot of money. I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I think, relatively speaking, I make a lot of money for someone my age. I have a cushy lifestyle. I get to work from home 3 days a week. I get free lunches. My family is proud of me. And that's all great. But despite all of that, I kind of hate my life, I spend every single weekday waiting for Friday to come. And then every single Sunday, I feel this very heavy dread knowing that Monday morning is just around the corner. I have very little joy day to day. There's very little excitement. And most of the time, I'm feeling like a zombie. Life feels very dull, feels very soulless and bleak. And honestly, it's worse than school because unlike school, there's no real finish line. There's no summer vacation or graduation to look forward to. If you want out, for most people, that means working 40, 50 years before retirement. And by the time you finally get there, maybe you're healthy, but, more than likely you're not. Decades spent sitting behind a desk, not moving your body, coping with the stress and pressure of work by drinking or eating junk food. That's going to take its toll on you. And the messed up part is I'm still doing this. I'm still working this job. And I think it's because I'm just sort of conditioned to think this is normal, that life is supposed to feel like this, that you're supposed to be chasing one hit of external validation after another while everything else in your life is sort of rotting away in the background. The high of good grades has kind of just been replaced by the high of a biweekly paycheck and the social status of being a software engineer and the validation of hearing during a performance review that you're on track. The addiction never really went away. It kind of just took on a new form. And I'm realizing that, none of this is really accidental. The system that we live in doesn't seem like it's built to help us discover who we are and help us discover how to live and build lives that are fulfilling. It seems more so that it's meant to produce reliable, compliant workers. It's sort of meant to make you conform. It's not meant to build you up as an individual. It's meant to make you conform into this cog. And the people who run the system, they like to dangle status and promotions and career growth in front of you. They like to keep you afraid of falling behind, but they also at the same time give you just enough reward and money and praise and validation in order to keep you showing up. They make you believe you want this, and they keep you afraid of not having it. And it's slowly sort of hollowing you out from the inside and making you numb. I'm talking from personal experience, how it is. Yeah, now that I've been working in this system for like 2 years now, I'm really burnt out. I don't know how much longer I could keep doing this. I know that every single day that I continue down this path, I'm really just betraying myself. I'm choosing to live a life that's inauthentic, a life that doesn't really align with who I am. And, the problem, of course, is, like I said, I'm conditioned to think that this is normal. And, you might ask, hey, why don't you just quit? And, I should quit, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I'm really lost now. I'm 23 and I have about as much clarity into what I want to do with my life as I did back in kindergarten when they first asked us, hey, what are you going to do when you grow up? I think back then I was like, I'm going to be a chef or I'm going to be an explorer like Indiana Jones. That didn't really pan out. I never really took the time to truly explore what excites me or just importantly, what doesn't, It's equally important to know the experiences that energize you and fulfill you as it is to know the experiences that make you feel dead inside. I think I'm getting more and more familiar with what's making me feel dead inside, which is a good thing. So yeah, if I could go back in time, I would definitely do things differently. I would not care so much about the good grades or taking the hard classes or impressing these Tiger Mom students. I think I'd spend much more of my energy trying as many different things as I could and just asking myself a very simple question, how these experiences made me feel. Because I think that's sort of the way to get to know yourself. You just try a lot of new things, you reflect on how it makes you feel, and then over time, over enough different experiences, you'll start to see patterns, and you'll get to put together piece by piece the puzzle of who you are. And if I did this, I think that by the time I graduated high school, I would have been in a much better position to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I might have found my purpose even. I don't know if that really exists, but even if I didn't, I think I know a lot more about myself than I do today. And, not to sound too woo-woo, but I kind of think that's the whole point of life. I think the point is to figure out who you are, to learn about yourself, and then to live in alignment with that as much as possible. To be authentic, to live with intent. Because I don't really think we get to choose who we are. I didn't pick to not enjoy the texture and aftertaste of celery, but I just don't. I can't explain why I don't. I mean, I could tell you I don't like the taste, but beyond that, I can't tell you why I don't like the taste. It's just who I am, right? Yeah, it's a very simple example, but also you can't really choose who you're attracted to. If you're attracted to the same sex, the opposite sex, both sexes, it's another example. The point is, I don't think we pick who we are, but I do think it's something that we discover. And I think that learning who you are and living in harmony with that as much as possible is what we should be doing. The more we know about ourselves, the more control we're going to have into how meaningful our time is, the more purpose we will have, and the better equipped we'll be to make decisions that are going to serve and empower us. I can't change the past and all those years of school that, in retrospect, I think I definitely wasted, but I can definitely change how I'm going to move forward from here. I have a lot of hope that I'm going to end up figuring it out. I have a lot of faith. Even though I never ended up really learning much about myself in all those years of school, and even though those years all feel like a waste, I'm really happy that I'm seeing things for how they actually are today, and I'm really happy that I'm not going to let the rest of my life slip by wondering what the hell I was doing with it. I know that one day I'm going to be really grateful that I made this video, and I'll see this as the start of my journey to self-actualization, and I'll be really proud. I know that one day I'm going to know myself. I'm going to live in alignment with who I am. I'll be able to honestly say that I'm living an authentic, intentional life. I can't wait for that day to come.